And we're based out of Canton, Michigan, which is near Detroit. And we started doing a lunch and learn series. This is our first one where we could talk about anything that we would learn at a regular lunch and learn, but remotely because a lot of us sit at home. So I was really thankful when Ben volunteered his team from American Airlines to talk about the developer experience at American Airlines. So I'm going to hand it over to them. But just before we do that, we are actually recording this. So if you don't want to be recorded, turn off your cameras. And if you don't want to be heard, go on mute and don't say anything. So anything else? Anything I missed? Lucas, Ben, Carl, AA team?
I think we're good. And Carl, I'm looking for, somewhere on the camera somewhere, but Carl's going to take it over from here and with Jason Walker and Melinda, and we'll fill in with questions. So Carl, take it away.
Sounds awesome. Thank you. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared. So I'm Carl Hayworth. I'm the product technical lead and principal engineer over developer experience at American Airlines. I have Lucas with me as well, who's a senior consultant in the coaching organization for IT Agile and DevOps. And then Melinda as well, a technical lead principal programmer for IT applications and leading a team that's helping out a lot with developer experience in a lot of different areas all over American IT. Let me, if this will go, maybe not. There it goes. So the whole goal that we were looking to achieve was a delightful self-service developer experience, a one-stop shop for all your IT service needs. We have a ticketing system in place right now where a lot of people will swivel chair tickets from system to system, providing human interaction and having to manually enter in items. By automating all these workflows, and instead of individual service requests, turning them into workflows that are automatable, we have reproducible patterns for our engineers to make their lives easier, and we can reuse code and reduce the amount of effort our developers spend trying to create various products. So Lucas will get into how it all started.
Yeah, so
Lucas.
I'm Lucas. I'm one of the coaches, and if you've been around the dojo community, you've probably run into a few of us or talked to a few of us. But at American Airlines, we like to use names that are very relevant to us. So we call our dojos the hangar. And one of the things that we would always run into is the problem that it takes so long to get something up and running and released as an MVP. Right? From an idea to a released MVP, there's so much work and so many manual processes that you have to go through. In the hangar, we would actually run into this and it would take up a lot of our time. So that kind of got us thinking. And some of the problems that we saw was that you would end up with a lot of different teams trying to come up with solutions for the same problem, which is how do we get something released? How do we get something out there quicker? And this meant that you have a lot of highly paid and expensive resources, right, at American Airlines, working in silos, but towards the same objective, and coming up with great solutions. But in some cases, it just it's not sustainable. So for example, we had a situation where we had a lot of solutions for how to implement Terraform at American, and they were all competing with each other. Or in some cases, different CLIs for templating applications. We also had different solutions for what would be the front door to IT, right? How do you get stuff done? And this meant that we had, various ticketing systems, vendor systems, and custom solutions. Now, because of the competition, that kind of made sure that none of these platforms would take over and kind of succeed because they were competing with each other and stealing users from each other. But we also didn't want anything that would crush these individual solutions because they were all great. They all solved a good problem, but they were just not taking hold enough. So Runway came in as an opportunity for us to kind of stitch everything together. Now, what you see on the screen right now is kind of a look at two steps in our two parts of our first iterations that what became Runway. When we first started in the hangar, what we created was a tool, which was a CLI, one of the many competing solutions that I mentioned in the previous slide. And it was a CLI that was meant to help us coaches in the hangar get past the first few weeks of every engagement, which is just setting up a pipeline, setting up a project, getting Terraform scripts, anything you needed to deploy to Azure. Now, as soon as we found out about what Backstage was doing, what Spotify was doing in releasing Backstage, we saw how well it aligned with what we were trying to do and with the problem we were trying to solve. And we decided to try out and do a POC. We found out that it not only aligned with what we were trying to do, but it was pretty flexible. It didn't really put us into a box and didn't force us down any avenues. So the platform wouldn't really limit us in the future. Once we had the POC up and running, we presented it to our leadership, got their buy-in, and we started building out what was Runway. Our initial goal was set up to create an application that was deployed and ready to run with a push of a button and in under 10 minutes. So that's kind of what we set out to do at that point in time. And Carl's going to talk a little bit about where we're doing now.
All right, so where we're at right now, we have Runway, which is our primary developer experience product. Runway is built on Spotify's open source Backstage. It's a great community. It offers a solid base framework based, based on best practices. It has a solid testing framework integrated into it to ensure the code is properly tested and free of defects, or hopefully free of defects, and a large community as well. Recently, Backstage and Spotify, actually it was Spotify, received an award for the top end user award from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation as well. So we're really happy that we chose Backstage to build on top of. And Backstage, Runway is actually an application created through Backstage through the CLI application. To help with developer experience and creating safer deployments, we're also working on a product called Tower. Tower will help us correlate code changes with deployments and our security scanning tools to block unsafe deployments. And we'll bring the information right back to the developers so they don't have to go digging in multiple tools. Because that's one problem our developers face today is we've got all these scanning tools for the pipelines, but the teams have difficulty finding and incorporating the information. So we want to bring it really easily to the developer through the Runway platform. And then we're building out our products in smart ways to ensure that we're extremely transparent and making things effortless on our customers. We couldn't be here without the concept of open source as well. And Runway, as Lucas mentioned, and we'll get into a little bit of a demo here in a little bit, but Runway offers the creation of standardized applications through blueprints, customized plugins for the automation of workflows that different teams develop outside of the Runway core team. And those come from inner source contributions all over AIT as well. Next up, Melinda will talk a little bit about inner source at American Airlines and how that propels the developer experience platform forward.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, this big blue logo that we have on the screen is our American Airlines logo for inner source. And for anybody who hasn't heard that word, it's the concept of open source just inside of a company. So all of those great best practices with repos, we want them to be really easy to contribute to. We want developers to be able to get up to speed on projects quickly and be able to contribute to them. And so inner source has been a large part of our journey in the last few years. And I think Runway being where it is today is very much so because inner source and Runway were able to converge last year. Not only our contributions to Runway itself, teams being able to tie in and add their functionality and just extend it as needed, but also for the community to have a place to come together and find the repos at American Airlines that are inner source so that they know what they can consume. And I think we're going to show off some more of those during the demo in just a little bit, right, Carl?
Yep, I'm just pulling those up now.
Yeah, so what Carl has up on the screen is what we call our inner source marketplace. We created it in early 2020, right around when the pandemic was kicking off. We launched it. And what it is it's a one-stop shop where you can figure out, excuse me, which repos inside of American Airlines are inner source. So if you're looking for something you can reuse, instead of starting from scratch, you would go here. And I think you have a couple of them open. Oh, Auth.js is a great example. So every single team at American Airlines has to solve the OAuth problem. And we found that teams were just doing it inside of their repos. They weren't extracting it or making it reusable for other teams. And so we had a couple of repos pop up where people were willing to make a reusable component, but they weren't very discoverable. And we eventually landed on this auth.js repo that we have a bunch of teams contributing to and consuming, and it's making it a lot easier for teams to not have to solve the same problems multiple times. So this is our new iteration of auth.js, but this came out of a couple of different repos. And that's been a mindset shift at American Airlines. The idea that instead of doing something in a silo in your code base that's locked down to just your team, do it out in the open, be open to contributions, be a really easy team to engage with, make it a delightful developer experience. That's the goal with InnerSource. So auth.js is a great example. And Carl, do you have the Artifactory action open?
I also have that one open.
Perfect. So at American, we've been using Jenkins for our pipelines for quite a few years, and we're switching over to using GitHub Actions. And what we've been trying to do is make sure that all of our internal actions that teams can reuse. So in this case, we have one for Artifactory, which is the package management tool that we're using. We want to make sure those are all inner source so that if teams need to extend them or change them, make tweaks to them, that it's all just as easy as opening a PR, communicating with the maintainer of that repo and doing it yourself. We do have that for Jenkins. It's just a bit more clunky. It's not quite as clean, but it's really important if we have a tool that the entire company is dependent on, that we make it easier for developers to use it and to make changes to it and to make requests. Instead of waiting in a queue for the team that owns that tool to do it for them, we want it to be easy for them to just come in and do what they need to do. And I think that's about it. We've had quite a few repos in there. And I guess, I should note that InnerSource Marketplace that Carl has up on the screen is a Runway plugin. We recently moved it from being a standalone application to moving it into Runway. So just trying to get one-stop shop for developers to be able to go to. And we have not open sourced this plugin yet, but we are hoping to by the end of the year so that the Backstage community can also use it if they would like to. And I think that covers it for InnerSource, Carl. I'm not sure what we have next on the
Awesome,
list.
thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, and I did just want to go over some of the other plugins that have made it into our developer platform, such as our access control plugin. This was developed as a generic way for teams across our company to get access to various tool sets. It's continuously growing. The entire Runway product is only about a year old at this point. And we've had some shifts in technology behind the scenes that have caused us to go a little slower and retool a little bit. We also started with Spotify Backstage when they were early in their alpha phase. So that also caused some tech debt to be accumulated. But now we've shed a lot of that tech debt and we've gotten really close to the Backstage code base and continue to stay extremely close to the Backstage code base so we can continue to benefit from the Backstage framework overall. But we've had multiple teams within our own organization who have tried to shift from the manual processes to more automated workflows and self-service. So we've had members from our delivery developer technical enablement team build items. We've had groups from our data engineering teams build items and other teams as well. So we've got the Apogee team that has created a full approval process and creating APIs protected by Apogee and managing Apogee all right within Runway. So we can abstract the whole Apogee process away from our developers and make it a lot easier. By building all of these plugins into a single platform as well, and I'll show the create process in just a moment, but we'd also be able to incorporate Apogee API microservice registration and protection all right through the create process. That makes it really easy for our developers to get started with all the batteries included right from the start.
Hey, Carl.
Yep.
On that last screen where you have Apogee, I'm monitoring the chat. There's just a couple of questions that I wanted to bring up. So Simon James asked and said, can they create the APIs right from the screen here?
Yeah, so they can. Teams would just go select what type of micro gateway they're looking for, where their micro gateway is deployed, because there are specific configuration items between our various cloud providers, and we're going to be adding more as well to the screen. But once they click create, it'll actually take them back to the create step, which I'll be going over in a moment using Spotify's terminology of blueprints to capture some of this information and then behind the scenes I believe it takes roughly 15 minutes for the micro gateways to reach back out for the latest configurations. But I've had new micro gateways protected within about 5 minutes through this process. So it makes it very easy. And then on top of that, we can manage the approvals and promotion to different environments as well from this one plugin.
Hey, Carl.
Cool.
Yep.
Hey, so specifically though on this piece, and to the question from James, this is about getting in an automated way the API policy in place via the gateways. The API code is then a follow-on.
Right, you have to write the service behind it.
Yeah.
The
So
code,
this is all about getting the policy
Right.
in place and getting it to where like the things are plumbed.
But the definition and the whole policy,
Yeah.
just like right here, you plug it into Apogee. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yep. And we will have, as far as that backend microservice that will end up being protected, I'll be able to show a quick creation and deployment of one of those microservices that hopefully in the future we'd have one step just to click to add Apogee. Right now it's 2 separate processes, but the whole point of building it all into a single platform is eventually creating those big long workflows that include everything right out of the gate with maybe a few simple input fields or checkboxes or select forms, whatever the case might be. So that's great. And our whole goal is to kind of remove the approval process and make everything self-service. But we do see at times with PII, PCI, various microservices, we do need to have approvals. In this case, the app approval actually uses the Apogee native workflow and all their APIs to handle the approval process for the APIs. Makes it really easy on our developers. So we dove into Runway. This is our homepage that we've got for Runway. So it's a place to identify, discover, and create American Airlines technologies. As I mentioned, we've got a couple items that have been contributed through standalone plugins. Our main goal, though, is to create new applications and make it really easy with all the batteries included. So this is our create screen. Right now, we are doing a shift from GitHub Enterprise on-prem to GitHub Enterprise Cloud. So some of our blueprints haven't quite made it over to this screen quite yet, but we do have single page apps for Angular, for React. Others I'm sure will follow. Microservices for Python's Fast API, which has been extremely popular at American, and then Maven Spring Boot will have others that are coming from our other GitHub instance as well. And then we've got Docker images to build and push directly to our Artifactory and our registry, our internal Docker registry, and then being able to take an entire application that already has a Docker image already packaged up nice and neat, because some teams already have an application code base and have already used the Artifactory reusable action to deploy to our registry, and they can use this simple action to deploy an existing app all the way out to our Kubernetes environment very, very easily. We do have lots of future plans. As I mentioned, our group is very new, very young. It started out as a POC. So we have a lot of plans going forward of how we're going to continue to extend the platform and do potentially things like mono repos. So an app team can come in and say, hey, I want a React app with a fast API backend. Maybe I need some sort of database or data store. So they'd be able to create that, and it would create a single repository with the GitHub action, the workflows, everything that's needed to get it out to our production environment and do it safely as well. As I mentioned, I'll go through the creation of one of our applications right now. So I'll just do KH test and then the date. And I think this is the second one. I did some cooking show magic just in case things didn't quite want to work out. We'll give it a tag version, a port as well, and then we're going to trigger our first release. Right now, our Kubernetes deployment flow, we're working on a lot of our Kubernetes automation in the background to enhance the offerings that we have right here. Right now, we only have a lab cluster, but again, we're building this up. We're going to have guided cluster selection for our teams to say, hey, I'm part of this organization. I'm going to be deploying to a non-production cluster, and couple other, a few short questions, and we can automatically guide our engineers and developers to pick the right cluster based on the group they belong to and the criticality of their application. We always want to give developers choice and freedom as well, while providing safe guardrails. So we'll also allow an advanced option as well, so developers can just pick their cluster from a big list of clusters. Once I see the basic information on the review screen, it'll deploy to a Kubernetes cluster. I'll click submit, and then in just a moment, it's going to create the GitHub repo that's going to support my application. A really nice solid base with a lot of our security tools built in, deployment strategies on down the line. So if I click on it, I'm going to do, in this case, and I've got a few tabs open, but I open this up in the background so we can see it. We can see in action, looks like it probably just kicked off here an initial commit, and it'll deploy our image out to our Artifactory registry in about 2 minutes it takes to build this image and send it off to our security scanning tools. So it's really easy to get your initial application out there. We can also, Backstage has this concept of a catalog. I can click on the catalog, I can see information about my particular application. You can see it's already been picked up by our Kubernetes environment. It's not quite deployed yet, so we do have some iterations to improve our user experience, but we're getting there, starting with an MVP approach and taking agile methodology to continuously iterate and improve. But if I click on the URL right now, and for this Zoom meeting, I actually jumped off the network. So right now, this is an internal link, but we do have options to protect by Apogee and get this available on the public internet. Because I'm the creator, I can delete, I can redeploy, or will be able to redeploy, and all that. I can come into CI/CD, see what's happening with my actions. A lot of what I'm showing here is part of Backstage open source, and a lot of plugins that we've had to integrate with and integrate our backend systems with as well. But we have created some customizations as well through Runway information cards. Again, staying very close to Backstage open source, but putting our own flavor and our own spin on things. Still somewhat a little bit basic. We can resync the deployments, and we'll be able to transfer it between clusters and promote it to different environments as well. If I look at the GitHub action, you can see it's still running here. It happened about a minute ago. As I mentioned, I did have a little bit of cooking show magic though, just because I'm not on the network at the moment. And I did want to show this off on once our final endpoint is out there. You can see that the initial release happened. It took about a minute, 57 seconds. And in a moment, we will see, if we go to the Kubernetes tab, we'll see that there's a couple errors going on. We've got back off on pulling the image because the image didn't exist yet. Our GitHub action was still working on it. We've got some errors, but we can see information about our ingress, our service, our deployments, all from one screen right here. So it makes it really easy to have one pane of glass for high level information, and then we'll be able to link our teams into more detailed information into other platforms as needed. If I come back to the Kubernetes tab, I'm hoping that in a moment, my pods will start going green here.
Hey, Carl.
Yes.
While you're waiting for that, we got a couple of questions. Chris
Sure
was
thing.
asking and saying about, I'm assuming, Chris, you're asking about the embedded stuff from Backstage. Is that what you're asking about? Chris Gavin? Anyway, the question is any of the embedded stuff in scope of this?
I think he means embedded code.
I meant like
Yeah.
the stuff in the planes.
Stuff in the planes.
No,
This doesn't deal with
oh,
anything in the planes at this time, but
yeah.
maybe soon.
Okay, that's what you're meaning. There was one other question earlier on about the OAuth.js, and they asked if we still had a central team that curates and owns that.
The OAuth.js is an inner source contribution, Melinda. I'm not sure if the team specifically owns that or not.
We do have a team that owns our instance of Pink Federate, but as far as off.js, the repo, no, there's a couple of developers that are maintainers on it, but we don't have a central team owning that. It's truly an inner source project right now. I think that was the question, is more about the repo off.js.
Yep.
But if I'm wrong, let me know in the chat.
And I participate in a couple inner source repos as well. That benefits the developer experience team along with other teams as well. And some of those repos don't have owners. For the most part, it seems to work out all right. When a team needs something improved, they reach out, create the code request, create the pull request. Other teams will jump in, provide their feedback. And yeah, we haven't had any issues with it. When vulnerabilities exist, all of our teams that have contributed get emails about those vulnerabilities and can jump in and fix those vulnerabilities. I know when I get those emails, I'll contribute back to the community and make sure that I update some code or update some dependencies, whatever is needed there.
So there was another question, if these technologies are being used to support externally facing services such as the IATA, NDC, content distribution, or is it only internal facing services at this time?
At this time, because of the state that we're in, it's probably likely just internal services, but we do look to support customer facing services as well.
And have we done anything with PagerDuty integration?
I don't think we actually have PagerDuty at American.
I don't think so either.
PagerDuty, no.
Yeah, we have other products.
We don't have it ourselves, but there may be a plugin. I'm actually looking at
There is one
right now. So Backstage, the cool thing with Backstage is that it's infinitely expandable, right? Anyone can create a plugin for it.
Hey, sorry, I'm having some audio fun sync issues because I'm doing Zoom live cast YouTube.
Oh, Justin, you got a question?
Yeah, it was a follow up to the inner source.
Oh,
question.
the off.js?
Yeah, just inner source in general. One of the things that as we are trying to drive it, we have enterprise initiatives to no asset left behind, no application left behind, and the concept of everyone owns it, no one owns it. If there's something that goes that people are not contributing to anymore, like that's one of the big concerns for security is like, hey, this is still being used, but no one's contributing. Is there a central team that we can assign ownership to? That's kind of where my question was going. And I know the culture of inner source, hey, we're going to contribute back and fix those security things, but I'm just wondering, sometimes people get busy and then no one's fixing it. What happens in those scenarios? Sorry for the interruption. It's a weird disconnect between Zoom and YouTube streaming.
Yeah, Justin, I think you're bringing up a great point with inner source. If you have repos that aren't owned or maintained by anybody, they end up getting, cobwebs in the corner, and then somebody's still using them, and then they need to be fixed. So I think one of the key factors of a good inner source project is having people who will own it. Sometimes that comes in the form of a team, like a dedicated team at American Airlines. Sometimes that's just developers that were interested in something and they started it, and then their team is willing to let them still spend time on it. And we're pretty new to inner source in the last few years at American, so we haven't had any major issues with repos being dropped that are critical to anything, but I think that's something we're going to be wrestling with a little bit more in the next year or so. But I do think it's important that repos have active maintainers that are reviewing PRs and that are engaged. And if we start to see repos where that's not the case, where the maintainers have either left the company or fallen off of the project, we are going to have to see if we can engage some people that are willing to be more active, and those tend to come kind of naturally with people who are interested in them and want to contribute and become familiar with the code base and then are willing to be maintainers from there. But it's definitely a process, and it's that method of finding repos that may be getting neglected that we are still in we're still in a journey of figuring that out as well. I'm not sure the audio issues, if he'll be able to respond right away or not.
Probably a bit of a delay.
Yeah.
All right. I think, Carl, we're back to you. I don't see any other questions.
Yeah, sorry, delay. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for.
All right, sounds good. And as Lucas or Melinda or maybe even myself mentioned, We are based on Backstage, so they have a bunch of plugins out there. I think one that was just brought up was Pagerduty. Of course, that's an open source plugin contributed by Spotify. We don't actually use that product at American, but it would be cool to implement a plugin at American for the product we do use and then open source that as well. So we do hope as American Airlines, we don't want to be just consumers of the Backstage framework. We also want to contribute back as well. So we've got plans on how we're going to contribute back, and then we have a product owner that's really hungry to get our name out there and in the open source community and attached to the Backstage project. We have done some bug fixes and improvements and are active in the community, but we're looking to get our plugin out there hopefully soon that we're developing internally. So that application that I did develop, that did get out to Kubernetes. It took probably a minute, maybe 2 minutes longer. We can see the applications running. As I mentioned, I'm not on VPN right now, so I can't pull it up, but we've got the URL available. I did pull up the application that I previously deployed earlier, same exact repo, except with a 1 at the end. And I did kind of pre-stage it to show that we've got the API live with a little message saying, change me. Our developers can go in, get started now, clone the repo, not worry about the infrastructure behind the scenes or any of the Kubernetes YAML files or anything like that. We also have, because of this framework, it automatically created a Swagger documentation that our developers can utilize. But because we're utilizing Backstage, we can come right in to the application, click on API, click on the provided APIs, and then also view the definition right here. So the Backstage framework and the application we've created, Runway, for our developer experience, we're hoping this will make it really easy for our customers to develop existing services, to create new services, to share, to contribute on down the line. It's a very powerful platform built on a lot of great standards with a huge community. Some of our other platforms we've developed internally, we started from scratch versus using a great framework such as Backstage. In those, we've seen some issues with standards and on down the line. So Backstage kind of helps keep us in line. If there are more things that anyone has questions on as far as the live lab, we can discuss those. I just kind of have 2 more slides to go over somewhat quickly. And Lucas, I don't know if you wanted to put your name on the slide, but maybe didn't communicate that one out.
Oh, I didn't, but I guess I can talk a little bit about that first piece there. We were really early adopters, and I'm pretty sure, I think there was a question earlier in the chat somewhere about pros and cons. I'm not sure if you were talking about using Backstage, but that's definitely one of the things we ran into with being such early adopters to Backstage. There was constant change with how they were implementing things. There were many cases where just to upgrade from one version to another, we had to make pretty significant changes in our system. Now, it never really hurt us too badly, so we were able to get through a lot of those changes pretty well. And I haven't been as involved recently, so Carl, you might want to jump in there as far as how that's been recently. But when the further along it went, those changes became less frequent because Spotify's platform was becoming more stable. When we first joined, they didn't really. It was like as soon as they released it, so we had so many changes that we had to adapt to. And not to mention that because Backstage is a very specific platform, we had to learn that platform, right? It is there is a learning curve for anyone that wants to jump into contributing to Runway, which is they have to understand how a plugin works, how to create a plugin. Now, luckily, it's well documented. There's a lot of information out there. And as far as the plugins, how they work, they're basically just a React application that you plug into the main Backstage application. So there is a bit of a learning curve. That's one of the big challenges, and it's something we deal with. It hasn't been significant enough, I don't think. Carl, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the Backstage technologies aren't universally known within our IT teams. We're an airline. We use a lot of legacy technology, kind of fall behind a little bit at times, but our team is tries to be cutting edge with what we're doing, tries to push our teams forward. But TypeScript is somewhat new for most of us at AA. In the past, we've chosen frameworks other than React as well. So React isn't our primary framework. And getting our inner source developers to contribute for these specific skill sets, because they are somewhat new to our company, can be challenging. But we are investing in our employees' future, and we're seeing some great results as well. So a lot of our engineers who started off being infrastructure engineers or working with other software frameworks, we've worked with them very closely. We've held lots of workshops, lots of hack events, hack wars type events to get their skill sets up to speed. And we've started seeing some great results from the inner source contributions and teams really growing and flourishing with their contributions. We've also completed a transformation from a product mindset to a project mindset. So there's been some shuffling of resources, but it's a strategic goal to, again, make sure we're investing in the futures of our employees. We want to make sure that they're constantly learning, constantly growing, and able to contribute to all these projects and products, and not just hiring new people from the outside. That's not really our goal. We want to make sure that we're building features at American. So we've taken a strong stance on prioritizing automation as well, supporting teams to get trained up on those new skill sets and technologies. And all of this is reducing manual efforts as well. So we've got a ton of work to do. It would be great to free up our resources to accomplish more complex tasks and more meaningful work as well. When you've got a large, are you going to mention?
So earlier you mentioned transitioning from a product to a project model, but it was the reverse. So project to product model. There was a question about it in the chat too.
Okay. Yep. I've got that reverse.
Yeah, no,
good point out. So, and when you have a large organization as well, you have many opinions of how things should be done. So we've developed a lot of snowflakes. We've started kind of the term melt the snowflakes, trying to get rid of all these unique opinions and trying to come together as a community and not silo all of these opinions and ideas. So we're creating safe, open communities internally to discuss solutions and patterns where we can accelerate our delivery, standardize, and make very capable cross-product teams as well. And then open source at American Airlines has been a little bit of a challenge in the past, but now I think we've had a dramatic change in a really short time from the top down, where there's lots of support for open source. Teams are really excited about that. But also with that, it comes higher levels of knowledge and expertise. So again, we invest in our team's futures. And then the future, so we will continue to focus on Kubernetes and enhance our offerings around Kubernetes and focus on app portability at American Airlines. So we can very easily move workloads from cloud to cloud, region to region, whatever the case might be. But we want to go a little slow into this realm and tiptoe and be careful. So we've got MVPs, we've got teams utilizing things internally, and we'll continue to iterate and develop and improve on those to get out to production to support all of our production apps. So we're soaking in tons of knowledge from our experts in the community, and we're utilizing 100% automation to ensure the setup of our clusters from 0 to ready is repeatable and reproducible as well. And our cluster automation is also going to be inner sourced, and we're developing that between multiple teams right now. We want to continue to look to how we can support our developers to reduce the snowflakes and establish the good patterns that everyone wants to use, and productionize our offerings even more. So we've only skimmed the surface of what our plans are. Runway started out, as Lucas mentioned, kind of a POC or experiment to see where things could go with a small team. And recently we've ramped up the resources on the team, along with working on the skill sets and continuing to advertise to everyone in AAIT for InnerSource and getting more contributions. And we're close to a full Kubernetes offering while abstracting out a lot of the knowledge from the development teams. We've even gone as far as creating our own custom operator to create a lot of same defaults for Kubernetes and take hundreds of lines of YAML for a normal Kubernetes spec and reduce those to, right now, I think we managed to do at a minimum 8 lines of YAML for an entire service, deployment, ingress, and then working on config maps and secrets as well. And again, we'll continue to invest in our employees' skill sets, offer the training, the support, the mentoring, workshops, pair programming, continue to do these community engagements as well, soak up more information, share our journey. And I think that's pretty much all I had to present. What other questions are there out there?
I was looking through the chat. There was, I think we've been handling most of them in the chat. So if there's any verbal questions anybody want to ask or anything like that, there was some around the funding as we moved from project-based to product-based in the funding. And that's as indicated in the chat, that's a conversation for another day, a little bit bigger, but we do currently fund by products, and that was something that was led by our finance department about a year. So we're 2 years into that now, but it's not done. It's as anybody that's gone through any of these journeys can attest that it's you're always finding new things and evolving through it. So we started with one thing and we're still evolving through that process too.
How's adoption been? I mean, are most people using this now?
As far as the adoption, okay, go ahead.
The adoption for the create process, because a lot of our stuff has been internal, we've been moving through POCs and MVPs. I would say the create adoption has been a little slower, but we have had a lot of teams interested in playing around. But as far as making meaningful applications, I would say that we're still working through that phase. As far as some of our other plugins where our inner source teams have developed various functionality within the platform, that has been heavily utilized. So we have access control for all of our data lakes, at least non-PII at this time, data lakes, and that has been hugely successful and has gotten a lot of people outside of AAIT into the platform. And that's one area where initially our authentication method was GitHub, and then we had to pivot away from that to ensure we could support the entire business, not just focus on IT for things like data lake access. Apogee has been hugely successful as well. So both the data engineering team and the Apogee teams have completely removed their old service request processes and have completely pivoted to using automation and Runway plugins. And then we also have quite a few more screens that'll be coming here within the next couple of weeks, but managing Azure service principals and then listening, deleting, managing has been successful as well. So little bits of pieces we're building out successfully, and then I think those will all come together here real soon.
That last one, especially the service principles one, based off of what I said earlier, where getting an application up and running it just took so long. And part of that reason is just access to what you need to even deploy to Azure, for example, in this case. So having this here has been pretty game-changing for teams. I was actually working with a team that I'm coaching right now, and we just use this to create a service principal for their purposes. So
Yeah,
It used to take a couple weeks to get a service principal created. You had to fill out a ticket, you had to wait. Sometimes your ticket got lost. It was a very painful process. So to have a button that we can click now, it's huge.
That's one of the things I've experienced. You know, I've lived in both worlds where it was really fast to get to production and incredibly painful to get to production. And you get a lot better ideas when you can actually use them.
Right. And you keep that motivation too, because if the person can't act on an idea, they might just not want to get started, right?
Exactly.
It creates a barrier.
Yeah, if it's too painful, why even bother?
Why bother? Exactly.
Well, one of the questions that we get confronted with all the time on this subject is how do you control cost, right? When teams are just able to generate infrastructure, that costs money, right? So how do you, are you using like roles and policies, or like what are the methods that are available for guardrails?
And Jason, I don't know if you could chime in here, but I think we're trying to be very transparent with the billing and tell teams up front at least in the future, we'll be telling teams up front of what their costs are. We do have a portion of Runway that deploys SAP services, and we clearly communicate upfront to those teams, and through the chargeback process, that'll be something that those teams can have chats with their management.
You're controlling it by giving them the bill.
Yes, yep, and making it transparent.
Right. Okay, so now I get it. They have to pay out of their budget. Okay.
They do have to pay. Now, we do have lab environments for our Kubernetes environment. I don't know how I don't know what our plans are necessarily around controlling that. That'll be less cost-based and more of a playground, but we do have to keep resource utilization under control. So Jason, did you have anything more to add to that, maybe?
Yeah, to everything that was just said, but also with and this is probably a little bit anecdotal with the full understanding that we're being recorded, but it isn't that rare. It isn't that rare that like our CIO will say, why aren't we spending more money in the cloud? So when it comes down to associating costs with, are we doing the right things? Trying to provide visibility, whether it's directly in Runway or just in a way to be able to show, here's how much things do cost. And as we get better at the patterns and the consumption, the variable consumption of those patterns in something like a cloud service provider, we absolutely have those levers to say, let's shift from pay-as-you-go to reserved instances or to other types of mechanisms to help control the cost. So it isn't so much the control side, and not that was the specific piece, but the visibility aspect is something behind the scenes, like outside of Runway, that there's definitely information reporting analytics on where can we save as we're trying to use as much as possible.
And Spotify does have their open source plugin for cost insights. We've looked into that. We created kind of a simpler way of doing that for our app service chargebacks and showing our developers. But that's available as well to analyze and understand your costs.
If there's not any more questions, and if there are, we'll pause for a second. I want to give a big shout out to the American Airlines team, especially Carl, Melinda, Jason, Ben, Lucas, for taking your time today to have this awesome lunch and learn. By my calculation, we had about 100 people cycle through Zoom, Twitch, and YouTube today, and that's pretty impressive. I would love to have any feedback about this event, how to make it better. Maybe we not do it ever again. Any of that feedback would be appreciated. But I want to hand it back to Ben and his team. How do we get a hold of you, Ben? How do we communicate with you in the future?
Absolutely. Any of us can be found on LinkedIn. We look at that on a regular basis. If you like what you saw here, you want to talk to us more, let us know. If you see a job you're interested in and want to be part of the community, let us know. We'd love to talk to you guys. We're always looking at great engineering mindset and bringing that here, and from a coaching org. But yeah, reach out to us on LinkedIn, and I'm also part of the dojo community. So if any of you in those circles that any of you in those circles that we would be happy to talk to you as well. I was just laughing. Brian's getting at me. He's like, poaching. Always the shameless plug.
we can remove Brian if that makes it better. Ben. So let us know.
It's okay. He's over. He's over. He's got some big problems he's dealing with over there in Platform One, and the you're dealing with when you got contracts of that nature, and you're dealing with government. I envy him. I don't envy him in that problems you're dealing with.
Maybe we'll make him do a lunch and learn later this summer or in the fall.
Some of the problems he's running into and how to handle that.
Yeah, well, we could just have Dana do that.
Anyway.
Inside joke.
Yeah, reach out to us on LinkedIn. Any of us are there. We appreciate you guys coming. And Carl and Lucas and Melinda and Jason, thank you guys for presenting. This was awesome.
Cool. I appreciate it. Matt's going to turn off the Twitch. We can hang out here and just chat if you want. We're going to post out a YouTube link where this is fully recorded because Jeff said, I wish this was on YouTube. Yes, it is on YouTube. And Jeff, you can share it with your coworker. Please do. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone. Awesome.